Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Blanche Cleans Up by Barbara Neely, narrated by Reneé Pitts. 1. May 1998. Day 1. Thursday. Blanche climbed out of the cab by the mailbox that read 1020. She ignored the sharp little wind that smacked at the backs of her legs, a reminder that spring in Boston could often pass for winter, and walked down the sloping driveway. She stopped halfway to the house. Her hand automatically rose to her hip as she gave the Brindle place a good looking over. The house reminded Blanche of her mother's friend, Miss Alice May, who still wore lace-up corsets and knee-length cotton bloomers as though the year were 1902. It was an old-fashioned brick house with shutters and trim in richest green. It rose up from the ground like a grand diva reaching her full height. Vain, like Miss Alice May, too, Blanche muttered. She adjusted the strap of her slip and continued down the drive. Understanding houses was part of how she made her living. Just like a good surgeon didn't open up a patient without an examination, she didn't clean or cook in a house until she'd done the same. She couldn't remember when she'd first understood how much houses had to say about themselves, but it was information she'd come to depend upon. She had an uneasy feeling about this place, but wasn't sure if it was due to the house itself, the job she'd promised to do here, the people who lived inside, or all of the above. She wondered if the house had a secret, like those nips of beef-eater gin Miss Alice May kept hidden all around her house. This was not the sort of job Blanche liked. Being housekeeper cook was the kind of position she woke up worrying about in the middle of the night. She wasn't scared of it. There was no type of domestic work that she hadn't aced in the 26 years since she'd taken up the profession. It was her ability to cook, sew, clean, launder, wait table, and all the rest that made it possible for her to make her way in the world and feed and clothe her dead sister's 2 children. Part of the problem with this job was that she never liked supervising folks, too much like being an overseer. She hoped that Carrie, the housemaid she'd met yesterday, and Wanda, the cleaning woman, didn't need somebody looking over their shoulders because she already had 2 kids at home. She had Cousin Charlotte to thank for this job. Charlotte had shown up at Blanche's house first thing last Saturday morning, one of her ever-present hats cocked on the left side of her head. Did she sleep in those things? That day she'd had on her what-to-do-with-old dishes hat. 2 overlapping, grungy, gray, felt-covered saucers turned face to face with a long, nervous, iridescent feather poking out to the side. That feather had danced a jig while Cousin Charlotte explained that she expected Blanche to stand in for Miss Inez, Cousin Charlotte's friend, so Miss Inez and Cousin Charlotte could travel down home to Fawley, North Carolina. "Are you sure you can't get somebody else?" Blanche had asked. She'd been smart enough not to add how badly Miss Inez got on her nerves with all that tiresome talk about her wonderful white employers and best-in-the-world son. "Blanche, I ain't got no time to be fooling with you," Cousin Charlotte had told her. "If you ain't got the common decency to help out my oldest and dearest friend, a poor woman who ain't never had a real vacation in her life, as a favor to me, your own mama's first cousin, then Blanche had tuned Cousin Charlotte out. It was all over but the shouting, and she was the loser. Not that she'd gotten a bit of thank you from Cousin Charlotte. Of course, Cousin Charlotte didn't need to thank her. She'd taken Blanche and the kids in when they'd moved to Boston in a hurry 3 years ago. And then there was Mama. She'd tongue-lash Blanche up one side and down the other if Blanche refused to help Mama's favorite cousin. Blanche just hoped her usual day customers got good service from Cousin Charlotte's niece, Larissa. Cousin Charlotte said Larissa used to work for a house-cleaning service, but that didn't mean she knew what she was doing. Blanche had called her clients and warned them that she'd had to replace herself for a week. She'd made note of which ones complained so she could replace them. Any employer who couldn't understand an emergency would likely be a problem before long. One of the major reasons she chose to do day work was being able to pick up and drop clients as she saw fit. This meant she didn't have to take no mess from nobody, her preferred way of living. Now she let herself into the Brindle house with the key Ms. Inez had given her. She'd gotten here early so she'd have some time to get a feel for the place. She stashed her bag and jacket on a hook in the utility closet. The house felt like sleep was still in charge, but she walked through the downstairs, looking into each room, making sure the Brindles were still upstairs. It was a good-sized house. 5 bedrooms with baths, 2 master suites, and another bathroom occupied the 2 upper floors. A living room, breakfast room with sunroom, dining room, library, and office, 2 bathrooms, the kitchen, and the laundry room took up the first floor. Each of the major rooms was nearly the size of a small apartment in Blanche's neighborhood. The house was furnished in what Blanche called undeclared rich. Gleaming wood chests and tables with a kind of detail that said handmade. Sofas and chairs that looked like they'd grown up in the rooms. Oriental carpets older than her grandmama. And pictures so ugly they had to be expensive originals. Light streamed down from a large window over the stairs to the second floor. The library, with its battered hassocks and mashed throw cushions, looked like the most used room. The office smelled of smoke and men. Blanche went back to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. While the water boiled, she looked around the room where she'd be spending most of her working hours for the next week. It wasn't the most modern, the largest, or the best-appointed kitchen she'd ever worked in. There was a microwave, but no convection oven. There was enough workspace on the counter between sink and stove, but Blanche was partial to a butcher block station in the middle of the floor, especially one with wheels. The appliances were on the older side, too. It had been a while since she'd used an oven she had to bend over to reach, and the dishwasher looked to be in its teens. What did impress her about the kitchen was how well Ms. Inez had organized it. The bottles and cans arranged by size, the spices alphabetized, and labels on the shelves so you didn't waste time looking for beans where only canned fruit lived. From the looks of what the shelves contained, not a lot of fancy eating went on here, which was fine with Blanche, less work. She carried her tea and the note from Ms. Inez to her already favorite spot, the sunroom off the breakfast room. She always liked to use the front of the house if she was going to be working in a place for a week or more, a way of reminding herself of her equality with her employers. She took a deep breath and felt her pores soak up some of the moisture. There were palms and rubber plants nearly touching the curved glass ceiling. Boston ferns on narrow columns drooped to the ground. A spleenwort with leaves wider than her hand took up a whole corner. A huge anthurium with what she could think of only as an erect penis in the middle of its flat red flower shared a 5-tiered stand with a spider plant, a piggyback plant, and several others she didn't recognize. Another circular stand held at least 20 plump African violets in every possible color. The white sailcloth-covered chairs seemed to float among the plants. She leaned back in an armchair and kicked off her shoes. The tile floor felt warm beneath her feet. She sipped her tea and looked over the 4-page note from Ms. Inez. It included meal times. 8:30 for breakfast. She checked her watch. She had over an hour to get that together. 1 o'clock for lunch, drinks in the library at 4:30, dinner at 7. Next came the list of meals for the week and the name of the grocer to call, if necessary. Inez reminded her that Mr. Ted Sadowski, who worked for Mr. Brindle, usually arrived for breakfast. He had his own key, and would take lunch if he was in the house. Alistair Brindle himself took care of the plants in the sunroom. The Brindle schedules followed, including lots of lunches and dinners out. Blanche was pleased to see. This job was looking up. As for the staff, Carrie had Sunday off and a half-day on Wednesday. Wanda Jackson, the cleaning lady, came on Tuesdays to do the downstairs and Thursdays to do the upstairs, which meant she'd be working upstairs today. Blanche got Inez's regular days off, Saturday afternoon and all day Tuesday. Felicia Brindle's personal trainer was due today, too, and her masseuse tomorrow. Friday was payday for Blanche and Carrie. Wanda's check got mailed to her. Blanche didn't have much information on the family, except that there were just 2 of them, a man and wife. She'd met the woman, Felicia Brindle, yesterday, when Ms. Inez had brought her in to show her around. "Inez says they're real nice people," Cousin Charlotte had said when Blanche asked her about the Brindles. "They even hired her son, but it didn't last. He didn't used to be so... You'd think he'd spend some time with his mama, stop by and... But don't get me started on Ray Ray." "What was I saying?" "Oh, yeah. Inez been with these Brindles since Jesus was a child. I know she told you how they just love her." Exactly. In Blanche's experience, the more a person believed love was a part of what they got from their employer, the more likely it was that the person was being asked to do things that only love could justify. Who knows what all Inez did for these people? Blanche thought about the woman down in Farley who routinely told her maid how much she loved her and insisted the maid call her auntie, things the young maid had bragged about. But the woman also emptied her bowels in a slop pot so the maid could keep a written description of its contents. Blanche doubted Inez went anywhere near that far, and like it or not, this was the job she was stuck with. But only for a week, she reminded herself. She drank the last of her tea and sighed. It was time to get to work. Blanche was cutting the biscuits when Carrie arrived, breathless and grumbling about the bus being late. "I'll serve breakfast this morning, Carrie. I haven't seen Alistair Brindle yet. I want to check him out. And this Ted who works for him, too." "Do anything you want to do. You the boss," Carrie said, but didn't sound like she meant it. Great. A sister with an attitude, Blanche thought. Thank you, Cousin Charlotte. Thank you, Ms. Inez. She gave Carrie a sharp look. Carrie was a plain-faced, dark brown-skinned woman, nowhere near as dark as Blanche, with permanent frown lines in her forehead and a chin round as a ping-pong ball. Her deep-set black eyes peered suspiciously out at Blanche from behind dinky little metal-framed glasses. Who could tell her age? Anywhere from 50 to 80, Blanche figured. Straightened, gray-streaked hair was visible through the thin black hairnet that covered her hair, the tops of her ears, and her upper forehead. She held her mouth as though she'd just had a vinegar cocktail. Blanche had never seen a grumpier-looking woman. Probably constipated, she thought. She set the biscuit cutter down. "Am I stepping on your toes by serving breakfast?" "Ain't got nothing to do with me." Blanche waited, sure this lie wasn't all Carrie had to say on the subject. "It ain't no job of mine, no way. It's Ricardo's job," Carrie said. "Who's Ricardo?" Carrie blinked at her. "He works here." Okay, it's like that, Blanche thought. If I don't ask, she won't tell. Is she mad because a stranger's come in to tell her what to do? Or does she have a constipated personality, too? So, where's Ricardo? Mr. B sent him and Eleanor home to Argentina. Because? Till after the election. That's why Inez said I could wait table and get the door. It don't make me no never mind. Why'd he send them home? 'Cause Mr. Ted said it wasn't right for somebody running for governor to have personal servants like that in these times. Who's running for governor? Blanche wanted to know. Mr. Brindle. Carrie's tone said everyone in the world knew this but Blanche. So Eleanor is Felicia's personal maid, and Ricardo is his valet and the butler? Carrie barely nodded. That's right. What about Eleanor's work? I'm supposed to help Mrs. B with her toilet, but she don't seem to need me much, so I just wait table and I'm just doing what Inez said for me to do. It ain't no big thing. Yeah, right. Blanche folded her arms and stared at Carrie. Carrie tossed her head. Well, it do make a change. That's better, Blanche thought. Well, honey, you can keep on waiting table, but not this morning. This morning I want to check out the household like I said. After that, you got it. Carrie gave her a barely visible nod. She didn't look happy, but she went off to set the table without further comment. Sweet ancestors. If she'd known she was going to have to arm wrestle the housemaid, she'd have gotten more rest. And what a hypocrite this Brindle character was, sending off their personal servants. As if anybody would mistake somebody who lived in this kind of house for just your average Joe. One of the two men at breakfast looked to Blanche like a high school boy in his dad's best suit. Ted Sadowski, no doubt. His bright blue eyes snapped with energy. Hungry eyes, Blanche thought. He sat on the edge of his chair. Alistair Brindle looked like what Blanche called the leadership. Square face, graying Kennedy hair, and squinty eyes. Was there a men's grooming shop that specialized in making white men look like born politicians, or was it a gene thing? The two men talked and chuckled together. Something about them reminded her of a couple of dogs sniffing each other and romping in the park. Felicia Brindle showed no interest in either of them. Morning, ma'am, gentlemen. Felicia looked over the top of her newspaper. She was a thin, sharp-boned woman who reminded Blanche of ribbon candy, all curves and gloss. Her pearly white skin, red jumpsuit, and red blonde hair only added to the effect. She looked directly into Blanche's eyes. Good morning, Blanche. Just juice and coffee, please. I hope you enjoy working for us, even though it's only for a short while. She smiled up at Blanche. Enjoy? If she wanted the help to enjoy it, she'd pay more for fewer hours. Still, Blanche was partial to employers who looked her in the eye. Neither of the men spoke or even looked in Blanche's direction. She considered giving them a loud, bustling greeting that forced them to acknowledge her, but she knew the advantages of not being seen. Still, there was no excuse for their bad manners. She made a mental note never to greet either of them first again. Ted Sadowski was going over his boss's schedule for the day. "The lunch should be a snap, sir. Then there's the Good Government panel, followed by an interview with you and Mrs. Brindle for primetime news, and a small reception at the Plaza. The Drake Society dinner tonight. That should be pretty low-key." Alistair Brindle nodded. "Excellent, excellent," he said, rubbing his hands together. Both men loaded up on the biscuits, ham, curried eggs, and mango slices, but not even Blanche's food stopped the flow of their talk. "We'll give 'em a bang-up lunch. Make them feel included. They all need that, you know, all of them. They're like children." Alistair Brindle spoke like an authority. "Oh, it'll be fine, sir. You've got them in your pocket. They're behind us 100%. Brindle reached over and slapped Sadowski on the back. "That's why I hired you, Ted. Even I believe you when you mouth that bullshit." Brindle's smile faded. "Let's not be overconfident, Ted. You can never quite trust them. You must never forget that." He gave Sadowski's shoulder a little shake for emphasis. "They've got different values. In the end, they're in the pocket of whoever pays them." Blanche left for the kitchen. She wondered which they Brindle and Sadowski meant. Blacks, women, gays, Puerto Ricans, people in wheelchairs. It didn't matter which. What mattered was that Brindle and Sadowski believed in they, talked about they as though they lived on the underside of a public toilet seat. Is this what Inez listened to every day? Poor Inez. Poor Inez, hell, poor Blanche. When the front doorbell rang, Blanche waited for Carrie to come running from wherever she was to do her Ricardo job. The bell rang again. Still, no Carrie. "Carrie! Door!" Blanche called toward the laundry room. "I'm in the bathroom," Carrie called out. Blanche went down the hall and looked out the long, narrow window in the front door. The man on the other side was the color of old, old gold. He could have been a mulatto or a Latino, but the ease with which he stood at rich white folks' door in his shorts and T-shirt convinced her he was Caucasian. She looked him up and down. Soccer thighs. She didn't know zip about the game, but she watched it on TV occasionally for the stud muffins, particularly for those long, muscular, almost girlish legs and tight butts. She opened the door. The man picked up his gym bag and turned toward her. He looked at her as though she were the center of the universe and everything else was background. He smiled a closed-mouth smile that warmed his dark blue eyes even more. "Hi, I'm Sax Winton. I'm Felicia's trainer." He held out his hand. "And you're?" His voice was deep and warm. "Blanche." She unintentionally mimicked his tone. She took back her hand and stepped aside. He gave her another of those Mr. Mona Lisa smiles as he passed her. "I bet his dick curves up when it's hard," she thought. Every man she'd ever known with an upturned dick had sex seeping out of his pores, just like this boy. No. Not boy. Those wrinkles around his eyes and mouth weren't all about laughing. Mid to late 30s, probably. She closed the door behind him. "Is that you, Sax?" Felicia called from the top of the stairs. Sax turned to Blanche and gave her a regretful look, as though duty were calling him away from where he really wanted to be. Great Googa-Mugga! How much of that hot lustiness pouring off him like water over a fall was under his control? Did he want to present himself as lunch to every woman he met? Or couldn't he help himself? Maybe both. Pity the poor cow who thought it had anything to do with her. "All right, Blanche, get your mind out of your drawers," she told herself. Still, how long had it been? She got to 2 years and stopped counting. Carrie came out of the bathroom off the kitchen. It was Mr. Sax, wasn't it? She sounded like her number had come out and she'd forgotten to play it. Yeah, he sure makes answering the door worth the trouble. Carrie stuck her nose up in the air. He sure ain't why I want to answer the front door. Like I said, that's my job from Ricardo. I just think Mr. Sax is nice, is all. Carrie didn't look at Blanche. Nice? I don't know about nice, but I bet he could make your panties melt before you could get them off. Carrie looked as shocked as if Blanche had lifted Carrie's dress to check on the state of her panties. "What you mean?" Carrie smoothed her dress over her hips. "I wouldn't take off I don't want... I got to get the sheets folded." Carrie darted into the laundry room quick as a lizard and closed the door behind her. Blanche shook her head. Poor thing can't even admit that a part of her heartthrob is coming from lower down. Probably won't even let herself feel that sweet drum beating down there. Blanche put on the kettle, then turned from the stove to watch the back door, knowing that it would open. It was an ability so old she no longer asked herself where it came from. A woman stepped inside. Blanche had no idea who she might be. Wanda Jackson, the cleaning lady, was due about now, but this white woman surely wasn't Wanda Jackson. "Well, darling, you must be the replacement," the woman said. She was about Blanche's weight, but a little shorter. They had the same stout-hipped, big-butt, big-busted frame, although this woman had the kind of shapely legs Blanche had cried for in her youth. Her hair was braided, too, not in 2 thick cornrows on either side of a center part, like Blanche's, but in a circle of plump gray plaits wound around her head. Her face was as rosy white as Blanche's was blue-black. The fine lines in her face reminded Blanche of the cobweb-thin cracks in very old paintings she'd seen in museums and wealthier employers' homes. "It's Wanda Jackson here." She thrust out her hand. "And what might your name be, darling?" "Blanche. Blanche White." Wanda gripped Blanche's hand as though she meant to keep it. She cocked her head to the side. "And what a pair of names for one such as yourself, eh?" Blanche was impressed. A white woman who brought up color without stammering and quaking and going on about how some of her best friends had color as a sign she wasn't a racist. What a nice surprise. "Speaking of names, you're the first white Wanda I ever met." Wanda peeled off 2 sweaters and a woolen scarf. "Well, you're the 5th or 6th colored I've had to tell that Wanda is an old Polish name I inherited from my Polish great-grandmother on my sweet dead mother's side. Then I married a Brit from Liverpool, just like me mum, name of Jack Jackson. Who named you, darling?" "Great-grandmama Ruth." She never said why, and she wasn't the kind of woman who took kindly to being questioned. Wanda nodded. Just the kind of woman I'm looking to be myself. She sat down at the table and changed.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?